Jack Morrison had been riding through the Arizona Territory for 3 days straight, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of red dust under the scorching desert sun. The year was 1882, and the frontier was still wild and dangerous. Jack was a cattle rancher from Texas, heading to California to buy new breeding stock for his ranch. He was a tall man with weathered hands and kind blue eyes, known for his fair dealings and honest character. As his horse picked its way through a rocky canyon, Jack heard something that made his blood run cold. The deep, agonized roar of a grizzly bear, mixed with what sounded like human shouting. The sounds echoed off the canyon walls, creating a terrifying symphony that would make most men turn and ride in the opposite direction. But Jack wasn't most men. He spurred his horse toward the commotion, pulling his rifle from its saddle holster. As he rounded a bend in the canyon, he saw a sight that would stay with him for the rest of his life. A massive grizzly bear, easily 8 feet tall when standing, was clawing frantically at something near a cluster of boulders. The bear was bleeding from several wounds, clearly in pain and extremely dangerous. At first, Jack couldn't see what had the bear so agitated. Then he spotted movement behind the rocks. A man was trapped there. And from the glimpses Jack caught of his clothing and long black hair, he could tell it was an Apache warrior. The man was enormous, probably 6.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders and muscular arms. But even this giant of a man was no match for an enraged grizzly bear. Jack quickly assessed the situation. The Apache warrior appeared to be caught in some kind of steel trap, one of those cruel devices that settlers and trappers sometimes set to catch wolves or other predators. The trap had clamped down on the man's leg, just above the ankle, and the heavy chain attached to it was wrapped around the base of a large boulder. The warrior couldn't move, couldn't escape, and the smell of his blood was driving the bear into a frenzy. Without hesitation, Jack dismounted and took careful aim with his rifle. He knew he would only get one good shot before the bear turned its attention to him. The grizzly was massive and wounded, which made it even more unpredictable and dangerous. Jack steadied his breathing, aimed for the bear's heart, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out across the canyon like thunder. The bear stumbled, let out another roar, and then slowly collapsed to the ground. Jack kept his rifle trained on the animal for several long moments, making sure it was truly dead before approaching. The Apache warrior watched Jack with dark, intelligent eyes that showed no fear despite his desperate situation. He was indeed a giant of a man, with copper-colored skin marked by old battle scars and arms like tree trunks. His long black hair was braided with feathers and beads, and he wore traditional Apache clothing made of deer hide and decorated with intricate beadwork. Jack approached slowly, holding his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Easy there, friend," he said in English, then repeated the sentiment in the few words of Apache he knew. "I'm here to help." The warrior studied Jack for a long moment before speaking in heavily accented but clear English. "You killed the bear for me, white man." "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Jack replied simply, kneeling down to examine the steel trap. The device was old but well made, with cruel teeth that had bitten deep into the warrior's leg. Blood seeped from the wound, and Jack could see that the man was fighting to stay conscious from pain and blood loss. "This is going to hurt," Jack warned, pulling tools from his saddlebags. "But I need to get this trap open." The Apache warrior nodded grimly. "My name is Running Wolf. I am a warrior of the Chiricahua Apache." "What is your name, white man?" "Jack Morrison. I'm a rancher from Texas." Jack worked carefully with his tools, trying to pry open the trap's mechanism without causing more damage to Running Wolf's leg. The trap was old and rusted, fighting him every step of the way. As he worked, Running Wolf told him how he had come to be trapped. "I was hunting deer in this canyon when I saw the bear tracks. The bear was wounded by white men's bullets, crazy with pain. I followed to put the animal out of its misery. It is our way to not let creatures suffer. But I stepped wrong in the darkness, and the metal teeth caught me. The bear found me here when the sun rose." Jack finally managed to work the trap open, and Running Wolf's leg came free with a wet sound that made both men wince. The warrior's leg was badly torn, but the bone didn't appear to be broken. Still, He would need immediate medical attention to prevent infection and permanent damage. "Can you ride?" Jack asked, helping Running Wolf to his feet. The big Apache leaned heavily against the boulder, testing his injured leg. "I can ride," Running Wolf said through gritted teeth. "But my horse ran when the bear came. I have no mount." Jack looked at his own horse, a sturdy quarter horse named Thunder. The animal was strong, but carrying 2 large men would be a challenge, especially with one of them injured. Still, there was no choice. "We'll ride double then. My horse can handle it for a while. Do you know where we can find help?" Running Wolf nodded slowly. "My people have a camp 2 days' ride north of here. My father is chief of our band. They will have medicine and healers." Jack helped Running Wolf mount Thunder, then climbed up behind him. The Apache warrior was even larger than he had first appeared, with shoulders so broad they nearly blocked Jack's view ahead. Despite his injury, Running Wolf sat straight and proud in the saddle, directing Jack through a maze of canyons and desert trails that would have been impossible to navigate alone. As they rode, Jack learned more about his unexpected companion. Running Wolf was the son of Chief Gray Eagle, leader of a small band of Chiricahua Apache, who had managed to avoid the reservation system by staying hidden in the most remote parts of the Arizona Territory. Running Wolf himself was considered one of the finest warriors in the tribe, known for his skill with both bow and rifle, his ability to track any animal or man across any terrain, and his fierce loyalty to his people. The sun was setting by the time they stopped to rest. Jack made a small fire and shared his food with Running Wolf, whose leg was swelling badly despite Jack's makeshift bandage. The Apache warrior's face was pale beneath his copper skin, and Jack was worried about infection setting in. "You saved my life today," Running Wolf said as they sat by the fire. "Among my people, this creates a debt that must be repaid." "You don't owe me anything," Jack replied. "Like I said, it was just the right thing to do." Running Wolf shook his head. "You do not understand Apache ways. A life debt is sacred. It must be honored." That night, as Jack kept watch while Running Wolf tried to sleep despite his pain, the cowboy wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had heard stories about Apache customs and traditions, most of them from white settlers who spoke of the Apache as savage and unpredictable. But Running Wolf seemed like an honorable man, and Jack sensed there was much more to Apache culture than the settlers understood. The next morning, Running Wolf's condition had worsened. His leg was badly swollen and hot to the touch, clear signs of infection. Jack knew they had to reach the Apache camp quickly, or the warrior might lose his leg or even his life. They rode hard that day, stopping only briefly to rest Thunder and for Jack to change Running Wolf's bandages. The Apache warrior never complained, but Jack could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes. Despite his deteriorating condition, Running Wolf continued to guide them through the treacherous desert terrain with unerring accuracy. As the sun began to set on their second day of travel, Running Wolf suddenly straightened in the saddle. "We are close," he said. "My people know we are coming." Jack looked around, but saw nothing except the same red rocks and scrub brush they had been traveling through all day. "How can you tell?" Running Wolf pointed to a small pile of stones beside the trail that looked completely natural to Jack's untrained eye. "Signs," he said simply. "We are expected." Sure enough, within an hour they were met by a group of Apache riders. Jack's first instinct was to reach for his rifle, but Running Wolf's calm demeanor kept him from making what could have been a fatal mistake. The Apache riders surrounded them, their faces serious and alert, their weapons ready but not openly threatening. The leader of the group was a young warrior about Running Wolf's age, with similar features and the same proud bearing. He spoke rapidly to Running Wolf in Apache, his voice filled with concern. Running Wolf replied in the same language, gesturing toward Jack several times. "This is my brother, Standing Bear," Running Wolf explained to Jack. "I have told him how you saved my life." Standing Bear studied Jack with dark, penetrating eyes. Then he said something in Apache that made Running Wolf smile despite his pain. "My brother says you are either very brave or very stupid to ride alone into Apache territory," Running Wolf translated. He is not sure which yet. The group escorted Jack and Running Wolf through a hidden pass that opened into a small valley. There, nestled against the base of a towering cliff, was the Apache camp. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Dozens of traditional wickiups made of branches and animal hides, arranged in careful patterns around central fire pits. People emerged from their homes and gathered around as the riders approached, their faces showing curiosity and caution as they stared at the white man riding with their wounded warrior. An elderly woman rushed forward as they dismounted, immediately beginning to examine Running Wolf's injured leg. She spoke sharply to the younger warriors, who quickly brought a stretcher made of branches and hide. As Running Wolf was carefully lifted onto the stretcher, he gripped Jack's arm. "That is Singing Wind, our medicine woman," he said. "She will heal my leg. You must stay as our guest until I am well enough to properly thank you for saving my life." Jack was about to protest that it wasn't necessary when a commanding voice spoke from behind him. He turned to see a tall, dignified Apache man approaching. The man's hair was streaked with silver, but his bearing was still proud and strong. He wore elaborate ceremonial clothing decorated with silver and turquoise, and there was an unmistakable air of authority about him. "You are the white man who saved my son's life," the man said in perfect English. His voice was deep and measured, each word carefully chosen. "I am Gray Eagle, chief of these people." Jack removed his hat respectfully. "Jack Morrison, sir. I'm glad I was able to help Running Wolf." Chief Gray Eagle studied Jack for a long moment, his dark eyes seeming to look right through the cowboy's soul. Then he nodded slowly. "You will be our guest until my son recovers. This is our way." As Jack was led to a wickiup that had been prepared for him, he reflected on how much his life had changed in just 2 days. He had started this journey as a simple cattle rancher heading to California to buy breeding stock. Now he found himself as an honored guest in an Apache camp, having saved the life of a chief's son. He had no idea that the real adventure was just beginning, or that his act of simple human decency would soon change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The medicine woman, Singing Wind, worked through the night, using traditional Apache healing methods to treat Running Wolf's infected wound. She cleaned the injury with strong herbal solutions, applied poultices made from desert plants, and sang healing songs while she worked. Jack watched from a respectful distance, fascinated by the ancient rituals and impressed by the woman's obvious skill and knowledge. By morning, Running Wolf's fever had broken, and the swelling in his leg had begun to go down. When Jack visited him, the warrior was sitting up and looking much improved, though still pale and weak from his ordeal. "The medicine woman says, I will keep my leg," Running Wolf told Jack with a grateful smile. "But it will be many days before I can walk properly again. You have given me back, not just my life, but my ability to be a warrior for my people." Jack was relieved to hear the good news, but he was also anxious to continue his journey to California. "I'm glad you're going to be all right," he said, "but I really should be moving on soon. I have business to take care of." Running Wolf shook his head. "You cannot leave yet. My father wishes to speak with you today, and there are ceremonies that must be performed to properly honor what you have done. To leave now would be an insult to our customs." Jack didn't want to offend his hosts after they had shown him such hospitality, so he agreed to stay a few more days. What he didn't know was that Chief Gray Eagle was already making plans that would forever change the course of Jack Morrison's life. During his stay in the Apache camp, Jack began to understand just how wrong the stories he had heard about the Apache people really were. These weren't the savage, bloodthirsty raiders that white settlers described in their fearful whispers. Instead, Jack found himself among people with a rich culture, strong family bonds, and a deep respect for the natural world around them. Chief Gray Eagle was particularly impressive. The man spoke several languages fluently, including English he had learned during his younger days when he had worked as a scout for the U.S. Army before relations between the Apache and the government had soured. He was intelligent, thoughtful, and clearly devoted to protecting his people in an increasingly hostile world. On Jack's 3rd day in the camp, Gray Eagle invited him to share a meal in the chief's wickiup. The dwelling was larger than the others and decorated with beautiful Apache artwork, intricate beadwork, painted hides that told the stories of great hunts and battles, and ceremonial weapons that had been passed down through generations. "Tell me about yourself, Jack Morrison," Gray Eagle said as they ate roasted venison, and a bread made from desert plants. What kind of man risks his life for a stranger? Jack was uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what anyone would do, Chief Gray Eagle. Running Wolf was in trouble, and I had the means to help him. Gray Eagle smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. You would be surprised how few white men would have done what you did. Most would have seen an Apache in distress and ridden away, thinking it was one less savage to worry about. Jack felt ashamed, knowing that the chief was probably right. He had grown up hearing the same stories as everyone else. Stories that painted all Apache as enemies to be feared and avoided. I guess I was raised to judge people by their actions, not by what other people say about them. That is the mark of wisdom, Gray Eagle replied. And it is why I believe the spirits guided you to my son that day. As the days passed, Jack learned more about the Apache way of life. He watched the women weaving beautiful baskets and preparing food, using traditional methods passed down for generations. He saw the children playing games that taught them skills they would need as adults: hunting, tracking, and survival in the harsh desert environment. The men of the tribe were skilled craftsmen as well as warriors. They made their own weapons, from bows and arrows to rifles they had acquired through trade. Jack was impressed by their knowledge of the land and their ability to find water, food, and shelter in places where he would have died of thirst or starvation within days. One evening, as Jack sat by the central fire listening to an elder tell stories of Apache heroes and legends, a young woman approached and sat down nearby. She was strikingly beautiful, with long black hair that gleamed in the firelight and dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. She wore a traditional Apache dress made of soft deer hide and decorated with intricate beadwork in patterns of turquoise and silver. That is my daughter, Morning Star, Chief Gray Eagle said quietly, noticing Jack's attention. She is 22 summers old and the finest young woman in our tribe. Jack nodded politely, trying not to stare. Morning Star was indeed beautiful. But more than that, there was something about her bearing and the way others in the tribe treated her that suggested she was highly respected in her own right. She speaks English well, Gray Eagle continued. I insisted she learn, along with Spanish and 2 other Apache dialects. Knowledge of languages is power in this changing world. As if she had heard her father speaking about her, Morning Star looked up and caught Jack's eye. She smiled, a warm, genuine expression that made Jack's heart skip a beat. Then she rose gracefully and walked over to where they sat. Father, will you introduce me to our guest? She asked in perfect English with only the slightest trace of an accent. Morning Star, this is Jack Morrison, the man who saved your cousin Running Wolf's life, Gray Eagle said formally. Jack, this is my daughter, Morning Star. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Morning Star, Jack said, rising to his feet and removing his hat in the respectful manner his mother had taught him. Morning Star laughed, a sound like silver bells in the wind. Just Morning Star, please. We don't use such formal titles here. Over the following days, Jack found himself spending more and more time talking with Morning Star. She was not only beautiful but also intelligent and well-educated in both Apache traditions and the ways of the white world. She had learned to read and write English from her father and had an extensive knowledge of history, literature, and current events that impressed Jack greatly. Morning Star showed Jack around the camp, explaining Apache customs and traditions. She taught him a few words in her language and showed him how her people tracked animals, found water in the desert, and identified edible plants. In return, Jack told her about life on his ranch in Texas, about cattle ranching, and about the towns and cities he had seen in his travels. Do you ever think about leaving here? Jack asked one afternoon as they sat on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley where the camp was hidden. Morning Star was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the vast desert landscape. Sometimes, she said finally, I wonder what it would be like to see the great cities my father has told me about, or to travel to the green lands where grass grows tall without the need for rain. But this is my home, and these are my people. I have responsibilities here. What kind of responsibilities? I am the chief's daughter, Morning Star explained. Someday, when my father is old, I will help choose the next chief. I teach the young girls traditional skills and stories. I help Singing Wind with her healing work. My life is not just my own. Jack was beginning to understand the complex social structure of Apache society, so different from the individualistic culture he had grown up in. Here, everyone had a role to play, responsibilities to the group that went beyond personal desires. On his 7th day in the camp, Running Wolf was finally well enough to walk without assistance. His leg was still tender and weak, but the infection was completely gone, and the wounds were healing cleanly. He sought out Jack to express his gratitude properly. "My friend," Running Wolf said, gripping Jack's shoulders in the traditional Apache manner. "You have given me back my life. This debt can never be fully repaid, but I want you to know that from this day forward, you have a brother among the Apache people." Jack was moved by the warrior's words and by the genuine friendship he heard in his voice. "I'm just glad you're going to be all right. That's payment enough for me." Running Wolf shook his head. "You still do not understand our ways. A life debt is sacred. It creates bonds that last forever. You are now family to us, whether you accept it or not." That evening, Chief Gray Eagle asked Jack to walk with him away from the camp. They climbed a narrow trail up the cliff face until they reached a flat area that served as a lookout point. From here, they could see for miles across the desert in all directions. "Tomorrow you plan to leave us," Gray Eagle said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I've stayed longer than I intended, and I have business to attend to in California. But I want you to know that my time here has been an honor. Your people have shown me kindness I'll never forget." Gray Eagle nodded slowly. "You have learned much about us in these past days. What do you think of Apache ways?" Jack chose his words carefully. "I think I was wrong about a lot of things. The stories white people tell about the Apache, they're not true, are they?" "Some are true," Gray Eagle said sadly. "There have been wars, battles, raids on both sides. Good men have died, Apache and white alike. But most of the stories, no, they are not true. We are not the monsters your people believe us to be." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Finally, Gray Eagle spoke again. "My son tells me you are not married, that you have no children." "That's right. I've been too busy building my ranch to think much about settling down." "And what will you do with this ranch when you are old? Who will inherit your land, your cattle, your life's work?" Jack had wondered about that himself sometimes, especially as he watched other ranchers teaching their sons to carry on the family business. "I suppose I'll have to find someone to leave it to when the time comes." "A man without family is like a tree without roots," Gray Eagle said. "No matter how tall it grows, the first strong wind will blow it down." Jack sensed that the chief was leading up to something important, but he couldn't guess what it might be. "I suppose you're right about that." Gray Eagle turned to face Jack directly. "I have been watching you these past days. I have seen how you treat my people with respect, how you have tried to learn our ways. I have seen how my daughter looks at you, and how you look at her." Jack felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. He had tried to be respectful and not let his growing feelings for Morning Star show. But apparently, he hadn't been as subtle as he thought. "Chief Gray Eagle, I hope I haven't done anything inappropriate." The older man held up a hand to stop him. "You have done nothing wrong. In fact, you have done something very right. My daughter has never shown interest in any man before, Apache or otherwise. But I see in her eyes when she speaks of you something I have never seen before." Jack's heart was pounding now. "What are you saying, sir?" "I am saying that Running Wolf's life debt has given me an idea. A way to repay what you have done for my son, and perhaps to solve a problem that has been troubling me for some time." Gray Eagle began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back in the manner of a man making an important decision. "Morning Star is 22 years old. By Apache standards, she should have been married years ago, but she has refused every suitor who has asked for her hand. She says she is waiting for a man who can see beyond the surface of things, a man who will love her for her mind and her spirit, not just her beauty." "She's certainly all of those things," Jack said quietly. "Beautiful, intelligent, strong. Any man would be lucky to have her attention." "Yes. But would any man be worthy of her?" Gray Eagle asked. "That has been my dilemma. Until now. Gray Eagle. Anamama. Anamama. The chief stopped pacing and faced Jack directly. Jack Morrison. I believe you are the man my daughter has been waiting for, and I believe she could be the answer to your own loneliness, the family you need to make your life complete. Jack's mouth went dry. Chief Gray Eagle? Are you suggesting? I am not suggesting anything, the older man said with a slight smile. I am proposing something. According to Apache custom, you have earned the right to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage through your brave deed in saving my son's life. If you wish it, and if she accepts, I would be honored to call you son. Jack felt like the ground was spinning beneath his feet. Marriage? To Morning Star? The idea was so unexpected, so far beyond anything he had imagined when he first rode into that canyon to investigate the sounds of trouble, that he could barely process what the chief was saying. But sir, I'm a white man. Morning Star is Apache. Our worlds are so different. Are they? Gray Eagle asked. You have lived among us for more than a week. You have seen our ways, learned our customs. My daughter has already learned much about your world. Love does not recognize the color of skin or the shape of eyes. It sees only the heart. Jack thought about Morning Star, her intelligence, her beauty, the way she laughed, the fascinating conversations they had shared. He thought about the loneliness of his ranch house back in Texas, the empty rooms and silent evenings. He thought about what Gray Eagle had said about a man without family being like a tree without roots. What would this mean exactly? Jack asked. If she said yes, if we married, what would happen then? That would be for you and Morning Star to decide together, Gray Eagle replied. Apache women are free to choose their own path in life. If she wished to come with you to Texas and be a rancher's wife, that would be her choice. If you wished to stay here and learn to be an Apache husband, that would also be acceptable. Love finds a way to bridge any gap. 9. 2. Jack's mind was racing. The idea was appealing. More than appealing. In the short time he had known Morning Star, he had come to admire and care for her more than he had ever thought possible. But marriage was a huge step, especially under these unusual circumstances. Does she know you're asking me this? Gray Eagle smiled. Morning Star is my daughter, but she is also a woman with her own mind. I would not arrange her marriage without her knowledge and consent. She knows I plan to speak with you tonight, and she knows what I intended to ask. And what did she say about it? She said that if you asked her to marry you, she would give you her answer then. Gray Eagle's eyes twinkled with amusement. But she also said that you would be a fool not to ask. Jack couldn't help but laugh despite his nervousness. Morning Star had a way of being direct that he found both charming and slightly intimidating. This is a lot to think about, Jack said finally. Yes, it is. But some decisions cannot be made with the mind alone. Sometimes the heart must speak. Gray Eagle put a fatherly hand on Jack's shoulder. Sleep on it tonight. Tomorrow, before you leave, ask yourself what your heart tells you to do. Then follow that voice, wherever it leads. As they walked back down to the camp, Jack's mind was spinning with possibilities and fears. Was he ready for marriage? Was he ready to take on the responsibility of a wife? Especially one whose background was so different from his own. Could their two worlds really be bridged by love? But every time doubt crept into his mind, he thought of Morning Star's smile, her intelligence. The way his heart raced when she laughed at something he said. Maybe Gray Eagle was right. Maybe some decisions had to be made with the heart instead of the head. Jack spent a sleepless night wrestling with the biggest decision of his life, knowing that whatever choice he made in the morning would change everything forever. Jack woke before dawn, his mind finally clear after a night of wrestling with the biggest decision of his life. As he lay on the comfortable bed of furs and blankets that the Apache had provided for him, he realized that his heart had already made the choice. The question wasn't whether he should ask Morning Star to marry him. It was whether he was brave enough to follow through with what his heart was telling him. He had faced down rustlers, survived harsh winters, and built a successful ranch from nothing but determination and hard work. But the thought of proposing marriage to an Apache chief's daughter in a language and culture he barely understood terrified him more than anything he had ever done. As the sun began to rise over the desert, Jack made his way to the stream that ran through the camp. He wanted to clean up and gather his thoughts before what might be the most important conversation of his life. The cool morning air helped clear his head, and the sound of flowing water was soothing to his nervous spirit. He was surprised to find Morningstar already there. Kneeling by the water's edge, as she filled a traditional Apache water vessel, made from decorated pottery, she looked up as he approached, and he could see something in her dark eyes that made his heart skip. Anticipation mixed with what might have been hope. "You are awake early," she said softly, rising gracefully to her feet. "Did you sleep well?" Jack managed a rueful smile. "Not really. I had a lot on my mind." "So? I know," Morningstar said simply. "My father told me of your conversation last night." They stood facing each other in the growing daylight, the sound of the stream creating a peaceful backdrop to what Jack knew would be a moment he remembered for the rest of his life. Morningstar was even more beautiful in the soft morning light, but it was the intelligence and strength in her eyes that gave him the courage to speak. "Morningstar," he began, then stopped, suddenly uncertain how to proceed. "I don't know the proper way to do this in your culture." She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell the sweet scent of the desert flowers she wore in her hair. "There is no wrong way to speak from the heart, Jack Morrison." Taking a deep breath, Jack looked into her eyes and spoke the words that would change both their lives forever. "Morningstar, I've only known you for a short time, but in these past days, you've shown me what was missing from my life. You're beautiful, intelligent, kind, and stronger than any woman I've ever met. I know our worlds are different, and I know there will be challenges ahead that neither of us can imagine right now, but I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life learning to be worthy of that love. Will you marry me?" For a long moment, Morningstar said nothing, and Jack felt his heart sink. Had he misread her feelings? Had Gray Eagle been wrong about her interest in him? Then she smiled. The same warm, genuine smile that had captured his heart from the first moment he saw it. "I was wondering when you would find the courage to ask," she said with a laugh. "Yes, Jack Morrison. I will marry you." Jack felt a rush of relief and joy so powerful that he had to resist the urge to shout. Instead, he reached out and gently took her hands in his. "Are you sure? I mean, really sure? This will mean leaving your home, your family, your entire way of life." Morningstar shook her head. "You still do not understand Apache ways completely. When a woman marries, she does not lose her family. She gains a new one. You will always be welcome here, as will any children we may have. And my father is right. Love finds a way to bridge any gap." "What about Texas?" "My ranch is a long way from here, in a part of the country where people might not be accepting of an Apache woman." Morningstar's eyes flashed with a mixture of pride and determination. "I am not afraid of ignorant people, Jack. I have been dealing with prejudice and misunderstanding my entire life. Besides," she added with a mischievous grin, "I am curious about this ranch of yours. I want to see these cattle you raise, and these green pastures where grass grows without need for rain." They were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Chief Gray Eagle emerged from the morning shadows, followed by Running Wolf, who was walking carefully but steadily on his healing leg. Both men were smiling, suggesting they had been watching the romantic scene unfold from a respectful distance. "So," Gray Eagle said with obvious pleasure, "am I to gain a son today?" "Yes, father," Morningstar replied formally, though her eyes were dancing with happiness. "I have accepted Jack's proposal of marriage." Running Wolf let out a whoop of joy and clapped Jack on the back hard enough to nearly knock him over. "Brother," he exclaimed, "now you will truly be my brother. Not just in spirit but in blood." Gray Eagle's expression became more serious as he addressed Jack. "You understand what this means, Jack Morrison. You will not just be taking a wife. You will be joining our family, our tribe. You will have responsibilities to our people, as well as to Morningstar." Jack nodded solemnly. "I understand, Chief Gray Eagle, and I promise you that I will do everything in my power to be worthy of the trust you're placing in me." The older man studied Jack's face for a long moment, then nodded with satisfaction. "I believe you will. Now, there are preparations to be made. Apache weddings are not simple affairs. There are ceremonies to be performed, customs to be honored." "How long will all this take?" Jack asked, suddenly remembering his business in California. Gray Eagle smiled. "Are you in a hurry to be married, or eager to be away from us?" "Neither," Jack replied quickly. "I mean, yes to the first, no to the second. It's just that I was supposed to be in California by now." "Your cattle buying can wait," Morningstar said decisively. "This is more important." Over the next 3 days, Jack was introduced to Apache marriage customs that were unlike anything in his own cultural background. The ceremony itself would be relatively simple, but the preparation involved the entire tribe and required Jack to prove his worthiness as a husband through a series of traditional tests and demonstrations. First, he had to prove his ability to provide for a family by demonstrating his skills as a hunter. This was challenging for Jack, whose experience was primarily with cattle and farming rather than hunting wild game. But Running Wolf and several other warriors took him out into the desert and patiently taught him Apache hunting techniques. Jack's marksmanship with a rifle impressed the Apache men, but they also insisted he learn to use a bow and arrow, a much more difficult skill that required patience and practice. After 2 days of intensive training, Jack managed to bring down a deer with a bow, earning nods of approval from his teachers. "You shoot like a white man," Running Wolf said with a grin. "But you think like an Apache. That is a good combination." The second test involved demonstrating his character and judgment through a series of challenges that tested his wisdom, courage, and compassion. These ranged from solving disputes between fictional tribal members to making difficult decisions about resource allocation during imaginary times of scarcity. Jack found these mental challenges even more difficult than the physical ones, but Morningstar helped him understand Apache values and ways of thinking. Through these conversations, he gained a deeper appreciation for the complexity and sophistication of Apache society. "Your people value consensus and cooperation more than individual achievement," he observed one evening as they sat together by the fire. "Individual strength is important," Morningstar agreed. "But it means nothing if it cannot serve the good of the community. A great warrior who thinks only of his own glory will bring disaster to his people. A wise leader considers the welfare of the weakest member of the tribe, not just the strongest." These philosophical discussions fascinated Jack and made him realize how much he still had to learn about his future wife's culture. But they also revealed how much Morningstar had to learn about life in the white world, and they spent equal time discussing the challenges she would face as a rancher's wife in Texas. On the evening before their wedding ceremony, Chief Gray Eagle held a feast in their honor. The entire tribe gathered around a great fire, and there was singing, dancing, and storytelling that continued late into the night. Jack was formally welcomed into the tribe through ancient rituals that made him feel like he was becoming part of something much larger than himself. Singing Wind, the medicine woman who had saved Running Wolf's leg, blessed the upcoming union with prayers and ceremonies designed to ensure the couple's happiness and fertility. She gave Morningstar a special necklace made of silver and turquoise that had belonged to her own grandmother, and she presented Jack with a beautifully crafted Apache knife that symbolized his responsibility to protect his new family. "This blade has been blessed with powerful medicine," she told Jack in her heavily accented English. "It will never fail you when you need it most. But it must never be used in anger or for selfish purposes." The wedding ceremony itself took place at dawn, as the sun rose over the desert in a blaze of gold and crimson. Jack wore traditional Apache clothing that had been specially made for the occasion: deer hide pants and shirt decorated with intricate beadwork, and a headband adorned with eagle feathers that symbolized his acceptance into the tribe. Morningstar was breathtakingly beautiful in her wedding dress, a creation of soft white deer hide decorated with patterns that told the story of her family's history. Her long black hair was braided with silver ornaments and desert flowers, and she wore the traditional jewelry of an Apache bride: silver bracelets, rings, and the ancient necklace that Singing Wind had given her. The ceremony itself was conducted by Chief Gray Eagle, who spoke in both Apache and English so that Jack could understand every word. The vows they exchanged were different from anything Jack had ever heard in a white church, focusing on their commitment not just to each other but to the welfare of their families and communities. "Do you, Jack Morrison, promise to love and protect Morning Star, to honor her wisdom and support her dreams, and to be a faithful son to the Apache people, who now claim you as family?" Gray Eagle asked. "I do," Jack replied firmly, looking into Morning Star's eyes. "Do you, Morning Star, daughter of Gray Eagle, promise to love and support Jack Morrison, to share your strength with his weakness and your wisdom with his confusion, and to be a bridge between the Apache and white worlds for the children you may have together?" "I do," Morning Star replied, her voice clear and strong. Gray Eagle then performed a ritual that involved binding their hands together with a cord made from braided horsehair, while he spoke ancient Apache blessings over their union. Finally, he declared them husband and wife according to the laws of the Apache people. As the ceremony concluded and the tribe began to celebrate, Jack felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. In the space of 2 weeks, he had gone from being a lonely bachelor rancher to being a married man with an entire Apache tribe as his extended family. "No regrets?" Morning Star asked quietly as they stood together watching their new family celebrate. Jack put his arm around his wife, and pulled her close. "None at all. Although I have to admit, this isn't exactly how I pictured my life turning out when I left Texas." Morning Star laughed. "Life rarely turns out the way we picture it. That is what makes it interesting." They spent their wedding night in a special wickiup that had been prepared for them, decorated with flowers and filled with gifts from the tribe members. As they lay together as husband and wife for the first time, Jack marveled at how natural it felt to be with Morning Star, how perfectly they seemed to fit together despite their different backgrounds. "What happens now?" he asked, as they lay in each other's arms, listening to the sounds of the desert night outside their temporary home. "Now we begin our real life together," Morning Star replied. "Tomorrow we start our journey to Texas, to your ranch. I want to see this place that you love so much." Jack had been dreading this moment, worried about how Morning Star would be received in a part of the country where Apache were generally viewed with suspicion and fear. "It won't be easy," he warned her. "The people there, they don't understand Apache ways. Some of them might be hostile." Morning Star propped herself up on her elbow and looked down at him seriously. "Jack, I have spent my entire life being different, being misunderstood. I am not afraid of ignorant people. Besides, I will have you to protect me, just as you will have me to help you understand things you never knew before." "What kind of things?" She smiled mysteriously. "You will see. Being married to an Apache woman will teach you many things about yourself that you never knew. Some of them might surprise you." The next morning, after an emotional farewell ceremony with the tribe, Jack and Morning Star began their journey to Texas. Chief Gray Eagle had given them supplies and 2 fine Apache horses as wedding gifts, along with his blessing and a promise that they would always be welcome to return. Running Wolf, who was now fully recovered from his injury, rode with them for the first day as an escort. As they prepared to part ways at a crossroads that would take Jack and Morning Star east toward Texas, the Apache warrior pulled Jack aside for a final conversation. "You have given me back my life, my friend," Running Wolf said solemnly. "Now you have also given me a sister who will be happy. I can never repay these gifts, but I want you to know that you will always have a brother among the Apache people. If you ever need help, for any reason, send word to us, and we will come." Jack was moved by the warrior's words, and by the genuine friendship he had found among people he had once been taught to fear. "Thank you, Running Wolf, for everything. You've given me more than I gave you. You've given me a family." As Jack and Morning Star continued their journey toward Texas and their new life together, Jack reflected on the amazing series of events that had brought them to this point. A simple act of human compassion, saving a trapped man from a bear, had led to the greatest adventure of his life, and brought him the love he had never even known he was searching for. The road ahead would not be easy. They would face prejudice, misunderstanding, and the challenge of blending 2 very different cultures into one household. But Jack was confident that together, he and Morning Star could overcome any obstacle. After all, their love had been forged in the crucible of courage and tested by the wisdom of an Apache chief who understood that the human heart recognizes no boundaries of race or culture. As Chief Gray Eagle had said, love finds a way to bridge any gap. 3 months later, as Jack introduced his Apache wife to his astonished neighbors in Texas, he would often think back to that moment in the canyon when he first heard the sounds of trouble and made the decision to investigate rather than ride away. It was a decision that had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined, bringing him not just a beautiful and loving wife, but an entire extended family and a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to be human. Morningstar adapted to ranch life with the same intelligence and determination she had shown in everything else, quickly becoming not just Jack's wife but his partner in every aspect of running the ranch. Her knowledge of horses, her skill at tracking, and her ability to read the signs of weather and seasonal changes proved invaluable in their cattle operation. Most importantly, she brought laughter, love, and wisdom into Jack's previously lonely existence. Their children, when they came, would grow up understanding both worlds, the pragmatic, individualistic culture of the American frontier and the communal, spiritually centered traditions of the Apache people. Jack Morrison had rescued an Apache warrior from a bear trap, but in the end, it was the Apache who had rescued him from a life of loneliness and showed him that the best adventures begin when we choose compassion over fear, love over prejudice, and courage over caution. Years later, when Jack was an old man surrounded by his children and grandchildren, he would still tell the story of how a single moment of human decency in a desert canyon had led to the greatest blessing of his life. It was a reminder that we never know how our actions might change, not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us, in ways we could never imagine. The bear trap that had threatened to end Running Wolf's life had instead become the catalyst for a love story that bridged two worlds and created a legacy of understanding that would last for generations. Sometimes, Jack would reflect, the most dangerous traps are the ones that lead us exactly where we need to be.